Hey guys, Dan here with this week's TV news and reviews. As we started last week with summer being here and also Hollywood being shut down due to the coronavirus, there is very few new shows each week. There's only going to be really probably 2 or 3 new shows debuting each week to talk about. So, like I started last week, we're going to end each episode of my weekly TV news and reviews with the Big Binge. And this week is another show that I actually did not review originally. This one just didn't really catch my eye because it was sports related, and I don't always do like documentary series. But obviously, Michael Jordan's The Last Dance on ESPN has been huge for ratings. You know, record-breaking ratings every episode on ESPN, and you know, obviously it was a big cultural moment as well. So I decided to just dive into all 10 episodes of that, and we're going to end our reviews with my big binge of The Last Dance. But first up, let's talk about the news of the week. Renewals and cancellations. Netflix is finally getting wise to allowing their storytellers to finish their stories. And there's been 3 shows now that have been given a final season. Shows like Santa Clarita Diet did not get that sort of final, like, okay, this will be the last season for you. So that ended on a cliffhanger, which I was very sad about, because I think I don't know, I feel like when shows know there's a finite end to their story, they will try and wrap up as many loose ends as they can, or maybe not open up fresh storylines if they don't know, that they're going to not be able to finish them. So we have 3 shows that are that were granted a final season this week. Ozark is actually going to have a 2-part 4th season, and it's going to be an expanded season. So the first 3 seasons of Ozark have been 10 episodes each. Season 4 will be 14 episodes broken up into 2 7-episode installments. So we're actually getting really like a 4th and a half almost season of Ozark. And then season 3 will be the end for Dead to Me, which I have loved from the start. My friend Melissa and I did very expanded season reviews of seasons 1 and 2 of Dead to Me. I'm sure we'll do it again for season 3. So I love that show. Sad to see it go, but you know what? Again, I think this is a show that was probably not designed for more than about 30 episodes. There's only so much you can go without starting to repeat yourself and things like that of that type of show. So I applaud that. And then the Kaminsky Method is also getting a final season, and that will be 3 as well, just like Dead to Me. And that's been a good show too. I've only seen the first season, I think. I don't think I've even started the second yet. But it's a great comedy show. Michael Douglas and Alan Arkin are great in it. That's a show that I think could have gone on further, but look, the days of Orange is the New Black and Grace and Frankie and House of Cards getting these 6, 7 seasons on Netflix is just, that's not realistic anymore. I think Ozark getting a 4th season is pretty wild. Stranger Things, I think, will probably go like 4 or 5 seasons, and that will probably be it for that. Even their most high profile of shows are just not getting more than 3 or maybe 4 seasons. That's just the way they are running things over there, and it makes sense from a business model standpoint, because they figured, look, this show is long enough in the tooth that either people that like it are already subscribers, or they just don't care enough to subscribe because of it. So, they're not, at that point, they're not making any money off these shows. So, it makes sense. It's nice to have awards, though. So, from a prestige standpoint, Orange is the New Black, Grace and Frankie, I mean, these are awards-generating shows, so that makes sense. But that's also under an older Netflix business model. So other than that, we do have another renewal for season 2 on Netflix. That's Never Have I Ever, a show that I graded very highly when I reviewed it a few months ago. And as well, going over to Hulu, The Great is renewed for season 2 as well. That's another one that I really liked. I was surprised at how much I liked that one. It's in the vein of The Favorite, that film, and made by some of the same people, so no surprise there. Stargirl is renewed on the CW, which is interesting because this show had sort of an interesting lead up because it started on DC Universe, which is the DC streaming app, but that seems to have kind of gotten swallowed up because, look, Warner Brothers owns DC, Warner Brothers owns HBO. Warner Brothers has obviously thrown most of their support and money lately behind HBO Max. So to have Stargirl go to the CW this summer, where obviously there's been holes in programming because of COVID, and it's performed fairly decently there. So they're going to keep that around for season 2, but on the CW only. And once the episodes are done on the CW, they're not going to even be on DC Universe after that. They are going to HBO Max. So proving my theory. And then the final one, this is very interesting. So Curb Your Enthusiasm, renewed for season 11 on HBO. And this is, essentially unheard of. There has never been an HBO series, scripted-wise, that has lasted this long, nor, time-wise lasted this long, because the first episodes of Curb started in the early 2000s. But there's been many, many years between seasons sometimes. But Larry is apparently writing a lot lately, probably a lot based on, the COVID stuff, quarantine stuff, masks, that kind of thing, that I'm sure he's going to mine for Comedy Gold whenever they can resume filming. But not only is it the longest running show in terms of number of seasons and length of time, but it's also the first scripted HBO series to get over 100 episodes, which I was actually kind of shocked by. I thought maybe Larry Sanders had reached that mark, but apparently I'm wrong. Apparently, the season finale of Curb was number 100, and so that has given it that, which is weird because Curb did go into syndication for a year or two about, 12 years ago maybe, so it must have only had about 60 episodes or something to cycle through, which is pretty abnormal for a show that's still on the air. But yeah, so who knows when that will be premiering, but that definitely is on the docket. And then canceled, Katie Keene. We're going back to the CW for this. This is one of those shows that was sort of on the bubble. I think what they were waiting for, from what I read, is how the streaming of it performed on HBO Max, and I guess it just didn't generate enough interest to continue. I think that's sort of a weird plan because I don't know. I feel like, not that it's a DC show, so it wouldn't be on DC Universe, but it is from Greg Berlanti, who does a lot of the DC stuff. I don't know. I think HBO Max is a little too new and too expensive for people that care about Katie Keene, but whatever. Either way, that gets the boot, and there will be no season 2. So we talked about pilots a little bit last week with NBC. We go back there, and ABC and Fox have sort of released their strategy for doing pilots for this season. Obviously, pilot season got shut down. So Fox, what they're doing is basically extending the, the options on all 6 of the pilots that they had in the pipeline. None of them were like real super high profile. The most high profile thing they have is Mayim Bialik's show, which was ordered straight to series, so they're not even doing a pilot for that. But the other 6, they've decided to extend basically through the fall, and then they'll decide from there, once filming can be resumed, which ones they want to pick up. And then for ABC, they are moving forward with 5 of their pilot orders. They had more than that, I think almost 15 maybe total that they had been sort of talking about, but they've ordered 5 to actually go ahead and make pilots. One of them, though, that did not make the cut, and this was very surprising, I think, for the industry, was the 30-something reboot. That was one that a lot of people were talking about, people were excited about. Original cast members were involved with it, and so much so that they were expecting this to go, that they were already starting a writer's room for it. But ABC has passed. I don't know if it, in the article I read, it didn't say anything about them trying to shop it to other networks. I mean, I think ABC owns the rights to it, so maybe they can't shop it elsewhere. I'm not sure, but But either way, it looks like 30-something is dead in the water. It's going to be called 30-something else. I never watched the original, but now that, look, I'm in my 40s now, I was interested in, seeing this come back, but obviously that is not meant to be. Survivor, yes. So Survivor is looking to film its next season in Fiji, and I don't know if that was on the books before COVID or not, but Fiji is a great place post-COVID because they've only had 15 cases of the coronavirus and no cases for like months. Like the island of Fiji has really kept everybody safe with coronavirus. So Jeff Probst basically was saying, well, we're talking every other day with Fiji and their government to see how we can make this work because we don't want to be the ones bringing coronavirus in. So I assume that's probably going to try and be shot in the fall for a winter, like a January type debut. I don't know, that the article didn't say that, but that's what I would assume. I mean, certain things are resuming filming overseas, nothing obviously in America or Canada yet, but I know some movies have resumed production in other countries, like Jurassic World, for example, is one of them. So, I mean, Survivor could, if they get the permissions to do so, be able to do that in the next, maybe month or two. But the problem is, countries keep closing their borders to the U.S. because how horribly we're handling coronavirus. So I'm sure that's an issue for Fiji as well. So we'll see what happens there. And then finally, this week in reboots, we talked a few weeks ago about Daria coming to Comedy Central. Well, not Daria specifically, but a spinoff called Jodie, voiced by Tracy Ellis Ross. I'm very excited about that, huge Daria fan. But now the show Daria spun off from is returning for a third time, Beavis and Butt-head, and that's going to be on Comedy Central as well. They're really taking the reins of this entire Mike Judge universe. And the original Beavis and Butt-head obviously was on in the 90s and then got renewed, or rebooted, I should say, in 2011. And that was an interesting reboot. I mean, I actually think they did a really good job with it. And it wasn't just music videos they were making fun of. They went to the MTV reality well. So they were talking about Jersey Shore and Super Sweet 16 and those kinds of shows as well they were riffing on. So I thought that was really cool, a nice little update. And Comedy Central has guaranteed 2 seasons of the new Beavis and Butt-head, which we didn't get from MTV. We only got 1 year of it. When it returned. And it's really still to this day, now granted I haven't had MTV in about 4 or 5 years, but to this day that's the last thing I think I watched on MTV. So it's been almost a decade since I've watched anything on MTV. Maybe I watched one of the Video Music Awards when I still had cable, I don't remember. But yikes. Anyway, so let's move on. And I will say this though about the Beavis and Butt-head. Mike Judge is back doing pretty much everything. He's going to write it, produce it, voice the characters. I don't know if he directs the episodes or not, but he's going to be involved in every aspect, just like he was, way back in the day, almost 30 years ago. So that is very welcome news. It's always sort of risky when people that weren't involved in the original production try to move forward with a remake, and that actually leads us into our first review for the show, which is The Babysitter's Club over on Netflix. So this is, obviously based on the books, but a lot of people forget because it was received very poorly. But The Babysitter's Club did have a TV show on HBO in the early 90s, and people didn't really like it, and I don't know. I don't know much about The Babysitter's Club. I have a board game of them, but I never read the books. I had friends that read the books, so I probably know some of the facets of them through them, that I've long forgotten about. But I did have, a handful of female friends that read The Babysitter's Club, and they were all female, so I'm not, gender stereotyping, but all the people in my life that read Babysitter's Club were girls. But this is on Netflix, and it's interesting because it's rated G. So they're definitely marketing it here as a very, very family-friendly show, which makes sense. The books were pretty much for like middle school kids, I think. They were, I don't think, quite immature enough for, little kids, like, second graders or whatever. And I think by high school, people that sort of read them through middle school, I think we're still, reading some of the newer ones. But I mean, I think you kind of age out of Babysitter's Club around, freshman, sophomore year of high school, maybe. But they're taking a very family-friendly approach to this. But what I find interesting is, even though it's rated G, there are still some adult themes, certainly. I mean, there's a breastfeeding joke that the mom, Alicia Silverstone, is playing, makes. There is some, divorce discussion going on. Alicia Silverstone's character, tries to, or wants to maybe marry this guy. And her daughter, who's part of the Babysitters Club, who actually formed the Babysitters Club, doesn't like him, so that creates some tension within the family. But in the meantime, Alicia Silverstone's playing a single mom, so that's, kind of hip for, a kids type show. And I wouldn't call this a kids show. I think it's rated G just because it is so family friendly compared to a lot of things on Netflix. But the main characters here are Sophie Grace, Momona Tamanda, I want to say, Shave Rudolph, and Malia Baker. Those are the 4 kids that make up the Babysitters Club. And then Alicia Silverstone, like I said, plays Christy's mom. And then Mark Fierstein, who we've seen in things, dating back to the 90s. He was on that TV show Good Morning Miami, I think. But, he was on Prison Break, and he did that not TBS, USA show for a while. So, he's a main character as well. And then basically, the pilot episode is all I watched, and it essentially just takes these girls and they form the club, and we kind of get to know all the little characters along the way. We get to know some of Christy's siblings as well a little bit. And I gotta say, this is a really good show. I didn't really know what to think of it. I didn't know if it was going to be too girly, and too girly for me is like nothing. I like the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, and look, I'm gay. I have interests that that reach beyond the typical dude interests, but also I don't. This just seems very, even though it's female focused, I think, I don't know. It seems very family friendly for everybody. I don't think boys will be quite as drawn to it because of the 4 lead characters being girls, but I think they might enjoy it if they gave it a chance. I mean, I was shocked at how well this came together. First of all, the young actresses, especially the lead that plays Christy, Sophie Grace, they're all like really good together. You genuinely get the sense that these kids are friends, and they have a history together, and I don't know if any of them knew each other, before making this show, just in acting circles or whatever, but they play it off really well. I mean, you really do believe that. There's some tension in the first episode, because the Mark Fierstein character wants them to babysit. He wants to be their first client, and Christy, is real mad about it, and she throws a little bit of a fit, and so there's some tension there between the girls, and I believed that. Everything is very believable about this show. The only downside I really would say about it is that I do think at the end of the day it is definitely probably more for young girls than young boys. And I don't know. I only say that as a negative because I do like more well-rounded shows. I mean, I feel the same way about shows that are mostly just geared towards guys, like action-heavy shows and stuff like that. I don't know. I like to see more well-rounded shows, but I was genuinely surprised about how good this really was. I mean, I really enjoyed this show a lot. Alicia Silverstone, I'll admit, I'm getting maybe a little sick of seeing her in the mom roles. I mean, she's every other show or movie I see. It seems like Alicia Silverstone plays the mom. She played the mom in the Diary of a Wimpy Kid reboot. And I don't know, just I keep seeing her pop up and things. And I think she's a good actress, it's fine, but all of her mom characters are kind of the same, and I'd like to see and I don't know if that's her or the writing necessarily. It's hard to tell. But I would like to see her maybe, stretch her acting chops a little bit. I really liked her in the 90s in a lot of things. I actually don't really love Clueless. That's one of the things I don't like that much that she's done, but some of her other things I've enjoyed. But either way, this was surprisingly good for me. And it is on Netflix, so all 10 episodes are up now. I'm going to leave The Babysitter's Club with an A-. I don't know how close it leads to the book, or the book series, I should say. But from what I read, if you were a fan of the books, you'll really like this series, especially in comparison to the horrible 90s one that they did. So I think whether you like the books or not, you can really enjoy this show as I did. So we have two TBS social distancing contest shows, I guess you could say, to talk about next. And these are both shows I mentioned just recently in the TV news, because they're sort of, quickly put together things, because obviously, everybody's looking for original content right now. It's interesting to me that TBS is, because TBS sort of has built their brand on, comedy reruns. So why they wouldn't just throw in extra episodes of Big Bang Theory or Brooklyn Nine-Nine, to fill this time, I'm not sure. But either way, trying to get new eyeballs onto their channel, I guess. And so we've got two. I guess I'll sort of talk about them together. The one is Celebrity Show Off, which is celebrities doing sort of their own TV shows. They're like 5-minute shows or whatever, of whatever they want to do, whatever idea they have, and they face off against each other. And the first 2 episodes has a total of everybody, so it's six people, or is it 5 people? Maybe that's what it is. 5 people per episode face off, and then it dwindles down from there. But the first 2 episodes, if you watch all of them, then you see everybody. But I only watched episode 1, so I only saw the first half of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, it is 12 people total, so or 12 teams total, because some of them are in groups. But so you see 6 each episode, and then I don't know what happens in episode 3, but they eliminate 1 each episode. The episode I saw was, I think, probably the more preferable one, because the second episode has a lot of the people I didn't really know. Like, there's a MMA fighter, and there's an Olympic gymnast in there that I didn't know. But the first episode, I knew everybody in there. It was Ja Rule, Kevin Smith, the Willis sisters, like the rumor Willis and stuff, Jason Mraz. I said Ja Rule already. Who were the other ones? Kevin Smith, did I say him? And Bella Thorne. So I know all those people, so there you go. And it's hosted by Mayim Bialik, like I said, and I think it's a lot of fun, actually. It's interesting to see how creative people are being at this time, and they've created like this really crazy virtual set that I really liked. I know that Mayim Bialik's just standing, on a soundstage or a green screen or whatever, but they make it appear like, she's in some high-rise apartment on the patio, and all her nice furniture is behind her, and she's like, "Oh, hey, let's look at this screen," and it, there's like a billboard on the building across from her that spins, and then you see the video on there, and it's like, none of that's where it's happening, but I think they've built a really interesting virtual set. I think the best I've seen so far. They did like the Masked Singer After the Mask show, and that was just sort of on like a like a sound stage. It wasn't even a green screen. It was just like wood paneling and stuff. So I liked the look of this, and then I liked the videos. Everybody kind of did something a little bit different. I have to say, I think there were diminishing results with the videos, though. They started with Jason Mraz, which was easily one of the best. Then they did the Willis sisters, who did like a Fear Factor thing, and that was kind of fun. And then Ja Rule did more of a community event one. He basically did an advertisement for this Greek restaurant that he really likes in LA, that he wanted to help promote because small business is having a hard time. And then like Kevin Smith's was not that good, partially because he incorporated his stupid daughter in it who can't act. He keeps putting her in her movies, and she just is a horrible actress. Kevin Smith has just, I don't know, his last 5 movies or something have just not been very good. But Jay and Silent Bob reboot was like okay, but I don't know. I like Kevin Smith to hear him talk. Like I like when he does the stand up shows. I like when he does phone interviews on radio shows and stuff. He's an engaging person, but I think creatively, I don't know, he's sort of run out of steam. So that I didn't really like. The Bella Thorne one was like okay. So I guess there were only 5 this episode, but there's 12 teams total. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I liked the concept of it. I think it was fun to see what people came up with, especially like, I don't know, like Jason Mraz is certainly a clever dude. He always has like some interesting wordplay in his songs and stuff, but he's not an actor. And other than, writing songs, what are his talents? Like we don't know. And, he came up with this really, really funny concept, and he had Rob Thomas guest star in it as like a floating head. He took a mushroom trip basically in the short, and Rob Thomas, his buddy, was there, and it was really, really inventive, really clever. So I liked seeing that. And so then the other show TBS has is the Tournament of Laughs. And this is basically a March Madness bracket type thing, which makes sense because there's no sports right now, and it's best of 32, so it's basically comedian against comedian, and they're going to just dwindle them down, by votes. I think, I forget. Neither show is really that explicit about how you vote, really. I think one of them is the number of YouTube hits that the segment gets, because this is the same concept as the Celebrity Show-Off. It's basically comedians just doing little skits from their house. Like one of them, was doing a roast in her living room. Gilbert Gottfried set up a fake dentist office in his house and was pretending it was dentist office. And then had his family in it. What did some of the other people do? Margaret Cho did like her famous mother character, and had her mom talk about social distancing and stuff. So, and these are, Gilbert Gottfried and Margaret Cho are about the biggest names here. Like Jeff Ross from all the Comedy Central roasts is a part of it. Triumph the Insult Comic Dog is going to be part of it in the second episode. They only did 16 in the first episode, so. But, some of them are comedians I've heard of in passing. Some maybe I've seen do a couple minutes on Conan or something like that. But some of them I just have no idea who they are. And so, Joe Blow going up against, somebody real famous, like Margaret Cho or something, like, I don't know how well that's going to go for them. But at least it's, I guess, some exposure for them. But Jason Sudeikis hosts this, and he hosts it sort of at a, like, Sports Center type desk. I actually wish he was more doing a riff on his old SNL character, where him and Will Forte were like the 80s Olympic commentators, doing that sort of spiel. Like I've gone back to those skits several times on YouTube. I just think it's very funny. But he does his little Jason Sudeikis bit here. He's sarcastic and kind of funny sometimes, but you can tell everything's like a little scripted. I mean, Maya Bialik is scripted too, obviously, on Celebrity Show-Off, but she's not really known for being a stand-up comedian. I mean, I guess Jason Sudeikis isn't either. He's more known for sketch comedy too, but I don't know. But I think he does a good job hosting. But I have to say, I found the sketches and stuff that the comedians did in the Tournament of Laughs just to not be that good. Like, when Jason Mraz on another show, like, completely schools everybody, talent-wise, I don't know, it's just interesting to me that, Tournament of Laughs didn't really get too many laughs from me. I definitely had a better time watching Celebrity Show-Off. And I think it's a better concept, too. So, I guess I'll grade them together. So I would give Celebrity Show-Off a B, and I would give the Tournament of Laughs a C. They're both interesting concepts. And look, you're not going to reinvent the wheel here during, the Corona shutdown. But I think it's hard to be too hard on something like Tournament of Laughs because there's only so much people can do in the shutdown. So everybody's giving it their all. I think they're trying. I don't know. I didn't think it was all that funny, which is surprising. And Celebrity Show Off even has, like, they have the other people react to the videos that are being shown, like, and they don't even show, like, in picture-in-picture. They'll just put up a little emoji that looks like Kevin Smith, or that looks like Ja Rule, laughing at something, or with a shocked face about something. Like, I think Celebrity Show Off is much better produced and put together. So I don't know. I definitely liked it more. You know what? I'm going to leave that as a B. I'm going to actually drop the Tournament of Laughs down to a C minus, just because it wasn't that funny. I think maybe they could have gotten better people. Maybe that's part of the problem. I don't know. So yeah, I think there's definitely a little more than just a 1 grade difference there. And with that, we are going to go to our Big Binge. This is sort of the new feature. I'm going to be doing this probably for the remainder of the summer, maybe part of the fall, depending on how many new shows we get every week. But, I try to review like 5 or 6 new shows a week, and that's just kind of impossible with the amount of shows that are not coming out right now. So each week I'm going to take, 2 or 3 days and just binge something. I'm not much of a binger, but I watched all 10 episodes of the ESPN documentary The Last Dance, and I'm not a sports guy. I've probably watched more basketball just in the clips on this documentary than I have maybe in my entire life combined of, like, NBA basketball. It's just not in my wheelhouse. It's not something I do, and it's really why I didn't review it, when it first came out a few months ago. I'm very selective about the docu-series and documentaries that I review on the channel, because there's a lot of them. I don't do a lot of the true crime stuff. Like, there's just so much. I did the Tiger King, and I've done a few of them, but for the most part, not so much. But this obviously was a huge phenomenon. It was big in the sports world, certainly. ESPN was starved for something to run because of the coronavirus shutdown. And in fact, this wasn't supposed to run until June, but they ran it in April because they were like, look, we got to fill programming. We have this documentary ready to go. Like, let's put it on, and while everybody's cooped up in their houses. And essentially it takes a look at The Last Dance, which is the last season that Michael Jordan was on the Bulls, the 1997-98 NBA season, where they got their 6th and final championship as the dream team, with Scottie Pippen and what's his face, Dennis Rodman and Michael Jordan, and all that. So this is a 10-part miniseries taking a look at all of that, and really taking a look at the lives of these people. I mean, it really goes back to Michael Jordan's childhood in the first couple episodes, and talks about that, and talks about his his foot in the door at Nike, and all of these other things. And then each episode sort of takes a different person or a different theme. Like, there's an episode devoted pretty much entirely to Dennis Rodman, and they talk about him and his background, and then him getting onto the Bulls, and then his interactions with Michael Jordan and that kind of thing. And then same with Scottie Pippen, and then there's an episode based around, Jordan's alleged gambling issues and all of that kind of stuff. So each episode does have sort of its own, little flavor to it. But here's my main issue with it. And to be honest, I never thought I would enjoy a 10-hour series about basketball that I was going to watch over 2 days. I mean, that's a lot of basketball for me. In fact, I only watched 2 episodes the one day. I watched 8 episodes the next day, because I was like, at the end of episode 8 or 9, I was like, well, I'm almost there. Like, I'm just gonna finish it. But there are these horrible time jumps, because the theme of it really all revolves around that final season, the 97-98 Bulls season. But the problem is, because each episode takes a different angle of something over the course of time, over the 80s, over the 90s, whatever, that the time jumps are just really confusing, and you never don't know where you are, because there's always like a little timeline that will like go, okay, now we're moving from 93 to 98, like they show you the timeline, but so you know where you are. But it's just, for me as a complete noob at like basketball, obviously I know about Michael Jordan, I know who he is, I know what he's done, I know about the endorsements, I know a bit about his personal life. I know probably more about Dennis Rodman's personal life before this documentary than I did about Jordan's, but I know who Scottie Pippen is, and some of the coaches I had even heard of, and that kind of thing. So I'm not going into this completely blind, but I mean, I don't watch basketball, I don't follow basketball, so when they start talking about all the different teams and the different championships, and this game was this, and this, had this, and the episodes that are focused more on basketball itself and less about the people involved, like episode 7 was largely about the game, and then of course the last episode was all about, well, even that time jump, though, it wasn't all about that last season and stuff, but so as a non-basketball person, I was definitely more bored when it was a basketball-centric episode as opposed to let's get to know these people. So with that in mind, I'm not sure if it needed 10 episodes. I think 8 probably would have gotten the job done. Once you focus on each individual member, of the team that you want to. I mean, you're not going to talk about the whole team, but they focus on about 4 of them, and I guess I don't know if one of the coaches got his own episode or not. I mean, when you watch 8 in a row, it was all kind of jumbled together. But I was trying to make mental notes of like, okay, in this episode this happened, and like there's an episode that talks briefly about Michael Jordan's dad, dying, and what kind of impact that had. But it was like a 5-minute blip at the beginning of the episode. I thought it was going to be a lot about like, I don't know, like more about his childhood that maybe we hadn't heard in the early era episodes, and it was like, okay, forget all that, let's talk more about basketball in the 94 season, or whatever it was, and I was just like, all right. So I think the time hops, even though I never didn't know where the story was, because the time hops were largely game related or statistics related, I got lost in that. And I guess more than I got lost, I didn't care, I guess I should say, which obviously, look, for a basketball fan, that's great. Like, especially with no NBA, oh my God, like this is amazing. It's sports that I can watch. But I also feel like an NBA fan probably already knows all this stuff, at least about the games and the tournaments. Maybe they don't know the backstories, and maybe they don't know. But that was, to me, the most interesting part. Like, whenever it focused on the gameplay, I just sort of checked out, because it's like I don't care about this. But I feel like, I don't know, it's sort of like I was trying to think in terms of like things that I'm passionate about that they could make a 10-episode documentary on. Like, for example, the Seattle music scene, like the grunge scene of the 90s, right? They could make a 10-episode miniseries about that to me would be like, oh my God, this is so cool. I would probably know a fair amount of things that they were talking about, but I don't know, it would be like, to me, saying all the chart hits of like Nirvana or Pearl Jam or Soundgarden, like, and then, showing all the different Billboard charts from those eras, I'd be like, yeah, I already know all that stuff. Like, that's not news to me, So I don't know, I kind of feel like that's how a basketball fan would be. Like, wouldn't they already know all of that stuff? So to me, I wanted to delve more into the lives of these people. And they got some great interviews, they really did. I mean, Barack Obama, obviously, being from Chicago, huge Bulls fan in the 90s, there's no doubt about that. So he was interviewed, frequently about it. They interviewed some of the people that, Michael had worked with over the years, and, aside from the team, but I mean, they interviewed his mother a few times. They interviewed Justin Timberlake, they definitely, went outside the realm a little bit of that stuff. They interviewed a lot of ESPN commentators, Bob Costas, of course, from NBC, who covered sports for 30 years or whatever. They interviewed him a lot. So, I think they got, the right interviews. But one of the things that has sort of plagued this documentary, and Ken Burns, the huge PBS documentarian that has won so many awards for his miniseries documentaries, was very vocal about Michael Jordan's participation in this documentary, because it's not just that they interview him a lot, it's that he was a producer on it and had I guess a pretty heavy hand in deciding what went in and what didn't. And so Ken Burns, staunchly said, like, look, I'll be upfront, I have not watched this documentary yet, but, just from a documentary standpoint, like, it's a very, very bad idea to have, the bias of the subject be one of the main producers of the documentary. And look, I think you're never going to really win there. I think it's a double-edged sword, because obviously Michael Jordan would want to be a producer of a documentary about a lot of his life. It's not only about him, but about his life and about, his history with the Bulls and all of that. Like, why wouldn't he want to be a producer credit, have a producer credit, get paid more, first of all. So that makes sense. But also, like, and I like Ken Burns. I haven't seen a ton of his stuff, but his stuff mainly revolves around older things. The history of baseball. Which isn't history of baseball of right now of people that are alive. It's like Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth and like all that kind of stuff. Then the one about the national parks. America's greatest idea, the national parks. Okay, but I mean, who's alive when these parks were created to even produce your show? So, like, I definitely understand what he's saying, and, like, I think about that with movies as well, like the NWA movie Straight Outta Compton, which I love, but, Dr. Dre was a producer on it, so they completely glossed over, his abuse of women, and that kind of thing. So I do get it, and from that standpoint, I do have to say it's probably not nearly as revealing as it could have been. And so I will give it a strike against it for that. But I don't think, like, Ken Burns was very up in arms about it. I don't think it's a horrible idea. I just think it definitely skews it a little bit. Like, I think any good documentarian would want to get the interviews from all sides and then just sort of create it, from that, instead of saying to Michael Jordan, like, hey, Mike, like, what do you think of this scene? Like, should we talk about this in your life? It does make it a little iffy, I have to say. But it was interesting, for sure. I mean, I definitely did not think I would make it through 10 episodes. In fact, at one point I thought, like, maybe this doesn't have to be the Big Binge. Maybe I'll just review it and watch the first 2 episodes like I do, most of the shows. Because most of the shows I watch, especially if they're on a network, I review them right away, so there is only 1 episode or maybe 2 that have come out yet. Now, Netflix, yeah, I guess I could binge those, but who has the time to watch, 10 hours of 4 different shows every week while I'm trying to watch, all the other things that I normally watch. But, yeah, I mean, I'm glad that I got through it. I'm glad that I decided to stick with it. I definitely learned, like, it's either episode 5 or 6 that really focuses on Michael's endorsements and all of that stuff. That, to me, was one of the most fascinating episodes, about his endorsements with Nike and, how that came about, and then his connection with Spike Lee back in the 80s with it, and all of that. Like, I found that stuff to be a lot more interesting to me than the basketball stuff. But I never would have seen that episode if I decided to give up, after episode 2 or 3 and just review, the first couple episodes. So I'm glad I stuck with it. But it definitely, the time hops are a big problem. Not that every story has to be told, in a linear fashion, but I don't know. I wouldn't call this show The Last Dance. I mean, yes, it concludes with the 97-98 season, and there's a lot, we jump back and forth, between things, but I don't know. I think this is more in general about Michael Jordan and the 1990s Bulls. Not just specifically the 97-98 season, and not just specifically, I mean, it's not specifically Michael Jordan, but everything is how it relates to Jordan. You know, oh, Dennis Rodman went off and did this, you know, in Vegas for 48 hours. How did that affect Michael Jordan? You know, it all comes back to Jordan. And that's another thing that maybe if it were produced differently, we would have had a different take on all of that. It wouldn't have been how does X, Y, and Z relate to Michael Jordan. It would have been how did Dennis Rodman's actions relate to the team. You know, and look, obviously Michael Jordan was mostly the team. Like, we all know that. Everybody showed up to see Mike, be like Mike, all that stuff. We got it. But I do think maybe not having him as producer would have opened up a few other avenues, you know, and whatever. But look, it's largely about Michael Jordan, so it makes sense that it would be produced by Michael Jordan. So, you know, there's that. But yes, I mean, I think we would have seen more warts about it. I think maybe, I mean, look, there was an episode about his possible gambling issues, but like, the episode is framed so that it's pretty clear Michael Jordan didn't have a gambling addiction, you know, and it's like, all right, well, I don't know, maybe he did, like, you know, but whatever. But all in all, I enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. I think if you're a hardcore basketball fan, there's things to learn from this, but in terms of the games that they show and the statistics and stuff, I feel like you already probably would know that. You know? So I will leave The Last Dance with a B. I do think it's pretty compelling, but it's definitely not without its flaws. So, yeah. Which is interesting, because of the two real big coronavirus, you know, documentary miniseries, I gave Tiger King a slightly higher grade. That was a B+. But, you know, at the end of the day, Tiger King was more, or less narrow, I should say, in its scope. I mean, it was by people that weren't necessarily involved with any of it. So they were able to show everything. You know, that's really like warts and all. This is like, you know, some warts, but mostly Michael Jordan's great kind of thing. But it is certainly riveting. You know, I can't deny that. And they got a lot of really good interviews out of it. So, all right, so that's it for the show this week. Thank you so much for watching. Next week, I know there's already a couple things on that I have lined up for next week. The Warrior Nun on Netflix, and then there's another new game show every week of the summer. It's like a new game show called, I think it's called Cannonball, that premiered, had a preview show on NBC a few days ago, and it's going to air starting this coming week on USA. So I'm going to review that. I think there might even be one other Netflix thing to go over, but within about a week and a half is going to be the debut of Peacock, the NBC app. So I will have a Peacock Is It Worth It video for you as well, like we do, you know, with all of them. So, but that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.